Hi everybody. Welcome to our podcast here. Usually मैं शुरू करता हूँ and I usually say this is a special podcast with a special guest, but today it sort of is true at a different level altogether because the special guest is my papa. Hi Dad.
Hi Rohan.
How's it been? बड़े दिनों बाद मिले. The thing is, it's Father's Day special. That's why we're doing this. But more importantly, Dad, you're a hugely successful person. I would obviously say that because I'm your son, but you're a qualified chartered accountant. You're one of the first 15 people in India who were ever trained in SAP. So you were from the pilot batch. You've seen the world because you've traveled and you've worked in the US, you worked in Canada, you worked in Europe, you've worked in the Middle East, you've worked in China, you've worked in India, you've worked in Singapore. तो कुछ जगह छोड़ी है आपने, हर जगह तो काम कर लिया. मतलब अफ्रीका रह गया आपका.
Yes, I've never been to
Never been
Africa.
to Africa. But other than that, he's been on all of the other continents. Of course, also not Antarctica, but the other continents that are warm.
In Australia
So,
also.
and Australia also. So, chalo, you haven't worked in Australia also, but the rest of the world you captured.
Yes.
And you've done projects for about 30 companies, and 30 of the biggest Fortune 500 companies in the world.
Yes. Yes.
So, you're a person who's obviously got credibility in your profession. Now you're retired. But I want to talk about a very specific time when you were working and I was just a boy. देखने वाले हो सकता है you're probably I'm already your teacher or you're looking to me as a possible future teacher. That's fine. But there was a time I was just a boy. I had no idea what's what in life. 11th 12th में मेरे को ये भी नहीं पता था कि भाई साइंस लेनी है कि कॉमर्स लेनी है. वो भी मैंने आपके कहने पे, आपने कहा कॉमर्स ले ले, मैंने कहा ठीक है पापा कहने तो सही है, ले लेते हैं. तो एक टाइम था कॉलेज के बाद जब डाउट आ रहा था कि क्या करना है. कॉलेज के बाद भी नहीं, कॉलेज थर्ड ईयर शुरू होने से पहले ही डाउट चालू हो जाता. तो मैं आपके पास लाया था आइडिया कि मैं सीए कर लेता हूँ. एंड यू शॉट मी डाउन, यू सेड नो, दिस इज नॉट समथिंग यू शुड डू. एंड देन राइट अराउंड माई थर्ड ईयर आई केम टू यू एंड आई सेड कि यार थर्ड ईयर के एंड के आसपास कि अब सीपीए का ऑप्शन आ रही है. एंड टू दैट यू आर वेरी एक्साइटेड, यू एनकरेज मी, सेड हाँ सीपीए कर ली, अच्छी चीज़ है. तो पहले तो सबसे पहला सवाल जो मुझे जानना है, जो सबको मैं चाहता हूँ सब जाने, is that you a qualified CA, successful SAP consultant, one of the best and brightest in the world, you recommended to your own son कि CA मत कर, CPA कर ले. क्यों
सीए मत कर और सीपीए कर ले? You take me back quite some time. Yes, I remember. I think you were in third year at that time, and I believe EY came for campus recruitment.
Yes, absolutely. It was the end of the 5th semester when this is happening. Yeah.
And EY pitched CPA.
Yes.
Right?
Absolutely.
And that's how you got to know of CPA, and that's
Yes.
how you came to me. Well, isn't the answer clear itself? There itself. I mean, why EY pitched CPA and not CA? Well, the reason is obviously EY is a global company, and they have operations world over, and they could easily have pitched CA for you or for the people they were recruiting from, and this was from Delhi University. So if I'm not mistaken, the general run-of-the-mill thought process is, if you are a BCom graduate, then you will do chartered accountancy or CS or CWA. Am I right? Things have not changed.
या MBA कर लोगे आज के ज़माने में.
But a change was being brought about when you were in third year of college, and there's a global company which came and said, have you thought of doing CPA? And you came to me and I said, yes, Rohan, this is something that you should definitely consider seriously. The reason why CA and not CPA, well, frankly speaking, you could have done both. There is no doubt in my mind that you could not have done CA. But probably my leaning towards CPA was a reflection of the fact that I had been working overseas, that I had spent almost 4 years in the United States on various projects, like you said, Fortune 500 companies. And myself being a chartered accountant, that helped. Because when you're facing a global client, education is very important. And chartered accountancy did give me that leverage at that point in time. But deep down, I realized that when I'm working overseas, when I'm working in US or America, they are not looking at the Indian chartered accountancy. They are looking at US GAAP. They are looking at IFRS. They are looking at these standards. And that's where I myself used to wonder that, okay, I'm a chartered accountant, which is fine, nice, but the customer actually doesn't relate to it. I mean, let's be frank about it. And I'm speaking of 1990s, India was not a global economy at that time. Now it is. So I used to feel the gap in knowledge as a chartered accountant vis-a-vis a qualified accountant from the United States of America or from UK or France or Germany. CPA actually gives you that. CPA bridges the difference. And frankly speaking, if you are working in the accounting domain, then might as well have the academic qualification, which is the most trusted, most widely used,
most widely recognized.
and that widely recognized. That's the word I was looking at. And that is CPA. I mean, CA is good, but it is not widely recognized. See, there's a difference.
Outside the India, it's not as popular.
Outside India, nobody cares you are a chartered accountant. You have to explain, okay, that's the equivalent of CPA in your country.
I remember you telling me this, na? At that point in time.
Yes.
कि बाहर बेटा बताना पड़ता है CA क्या होती है.
A CPA does not need introduction. Let me put it like that. So when you came with that proposal, probably that the factor which played in my mind that, look, here's an international qualification. And you had already done your graduation or were in the third year of doing your commerce graduation. So a logical step forward was an accounting degree. And what better than an international accounting degree? And CPA is
the
better choice.
ठीक है, मतलब basically what you're saying, if I were to just sum it up, is that you saw कि ठीक है यार, CPA is the more recognized, globally accredited qualification, so it should lead to greater scope, which is why you selected it for me and you said ये कर ले. मतलब again, I'm not trying to imply here कि आपने बोला तो मैंने कर लिया, ऐसा नहीं है. But fact of the matter is, when I came to you, I was looking for somebody with validation, and I wanted somebody who's reasonably successful, who's seen the world, who's able to tell me कि ये ठीक है नहीं है. And you did that for me. You did that because you thought the scope is big. तो चलो पहले आप ही के एक्सपीरियंस से ड्रॉ कर लेते हैं. Based on your experience of working abroad, what was the scope of CPAs that you saw in the US or even in Europe or even in China for that matter? What's the scope of CPA that you saw that you know कि ये ज़्यादा है in comparison to CA?
See, my thought process is obviously with relevance to my experience in SAP. I mean, the reason I was abroad was because of SAP. So when you are working for a client like Siemens or Nissan or ABB, I mean, I don't know if I should say this, but it does look kind of weird if you want the client to explain to you the provisions under US GAAP. You see what I'm saying? I mean, obviously you try to hide your knowledge gap, but fact remains that you have not read US GAAP. You have not read IFRS. That's not something that you've been trained and worked on or done or having experience on. So I don't know if that answers your question. That this gap actually is what CPA bridges, right? So here's a fellow CPA who knows what the customer is talking about when it talks of
उसको पता कस्टमर का प्रोसेस ऐसा
US GAAP.
क्योंकि उसको US GAAP पता
कि लीजेस की काउंटिंग कैसे करनी है, इंश्योरेंस की काउंटिंग कैसे करनी है. So this kind of thing,
या ये कंट्रोल यहाँ क्यों लगा हुआ है,
you are doing catching up.
Yes.
As an Indian with a CA degree, whereas those guys are they already know what it is. I mean, another example is depreciation accounting. they have very very specific requirements.
modified accelerated
MACRS,
Mackers modified
ACRS.
accelerated cost recovery system,
Yeah.
ये यूएस का
So,
अपना सिस्टम है जो कहीं और
yes.
चलता नहीं
और
दुनिया
कहीं नहीं
में,
चलता.
तो अगर आपको जानना हो तो
And
आपको
this
CPA
is all
करना पड़ेगा
inbuilt in SAP software.
SAP.
So here's the software of which you claim to be a consultant, but the truth is you know only written down value method and straight line method.
You should know what Mackers does
And you have no clue what MACRS is or
and how the
ACRS is.
conventions work, right?
So that's what I'm saying. If you have to be, and you can't avoid that now in the current global environment, you are going to become willy-nilly a global player because of the sheer fact that you are going to work for a multinational corporation, whether based in India or overseas.
Correct.
You have to know these things, and accordingly, you need to pick a degree which prepares you for these things.
Right. Absolutely. Very good answer, यार. Proud of you, Maka. अच्छा चलो ठीक है, ये हो गई बात बाहर की. फिर अब इंडिया की बात कर लेते हैं. अब आज के ज़माने में इंडिया में चीज़ें तो बदली हैं यार. India has changed since the 1990s. So in today's India, what do you see CPA scope is? आज के ज़माने में.
See, frankly speaking, when I started my career with SAP, I had not heard of CPA. The mere fact that we are now talking of CPA in India tells you
Things have changed.
things have changed dramatically. We are talking of CPA in India.
Yeah.
US is not talking of Chartered Accountancy of India,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Whether you like it or not, the world is still ruled by United States of America and Europe.
Yeah.
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 And for them, you have to have understanding of their laws, their accounting regime, and their accounting standards, which is predominantly SAP is the leading software world over, right? And SAP is built on these IFRS and US GAAP and other accounting standards, globally accepted accounting standards. So the scope in India is obviously now widening. 30 years back, 30 years back, nobody had heard of SAP in India. Siemens pioneered the entry of SAP in India, and that's how they selected about 14 people across India from various disciplines, including chartered accountancy, engineers, MBAs, cost accountants, and they trained us on SAP. And now the situation is, if you want to work on SAP, and SAP is world over now. I mean, Fortune 500 companies are on SAP. Can you imagine having an accounting degree or having an education qualification which does not support this kind of a global software or a global needs of a global client? CPA is obviously going to catch up. Obviously, it is catching up. Obviously, more and more students are enrolling for it, are wanting to know what it is. I mean, this is one obvious reason. I will not go into the other aspect of why CPA and why not CA. That's a different, unless you want to ask me on that, but that's a different question.
I was actually planning to ask
Oh,
you.
you are? I'm a chartered accountant. My first love.
But I want to complete this particular conversation first. भाई मुझे ये लगता है, the thing that you should also probably point out for the viewers, the ladies and gentlemen watching, कि इंडिया में आउटसोर्सिंग का काम बहुत स्पीड से बढ़ रहा है अर्ली 2000 से. और ये सारा आउटसोर्सिंग का जो काम आ रहा है, स्पेशली अगर आप कॉमर्स के डोमेन से हो. अगेन इफ यू आर एन इंजीनियर, probably this doesn't affect your life much. If you're somebody who's a doctor, this doesn't affect your life much. If you're from the commerce domain, you're looking to build a career in, accounting and finance, which is primarily your primary choice anyway. और क्या कर लोगे, फाइनेंस एंड अकाउंटिंग ही होती है कॉमर्स के बाद. तो अगर एफएनए के डोमेन में जा रहे हो, तो जो फैक्ट ऑफ द मैटर इज, मेजर काम इंडिया में जो आ रहा है आज की तारीख में आउटसोर्सिंग का है, और वो काम यूएस के स्टैंडर्ड्स पे या यूके के स्टैंडर्ड्स
Precisely.
इंडिया स्टैंडर्ड्स पे हो ही नहीं रहा.
हाँ. You need to sum up the books. You need to report on the books based on those standards. So that's another thing. You are outsourcing, you are getting work from overseas. And if you are not equipped to handle that work based on their business requirements or legal
वो
requirements
submission उसी
or
format में
reporting
होगी ना?
requirements, then you are not fit for that job.
Correct.
So, which is why you will notice companies are hiring in India for global clients. So, it is not necessary that the purpose of doing CPA is you want to go abroad. No, that's obviously another reason for doing CPA. But
That is
also
an added motivation, but
added
it can't be
motivation.
your primary,
Yes, and
driving
India
force.
is why I wouldn't even say not very far off. India is the leading one of the leading economies of the world. It's very closely and speedily getting integrated into the global economy. Our multinationals are no different now from the big names that you hear from US and Europe. And these companies based out of India, headquartered in India,
Yes.
their
They require a CPAs now because they're listed on
their
NYSE.
DNA is Indian, but they also need to report as per the global standards. So they also, even Indian multinationals are hiring CPAs.
जैसे for example HDFC,
Yes, they would hire CPAs.
they're listed on
I mean, they
NYSE.
hire CAs, but they also hire CPAs.
CPAs, yes, because they're listed on NYSE ना, they have to submit to the SEC. तो वो अब submit करना है तो उसी format में होगा ना US gap में. That is the idea. ठीक है, okay, so I hope this is sort of covered for everybody who's watching. But in addition to that, मैं अब एक सवाल और पूछूंगा. अगेन आई एम नॉट सेइंग एट ऑल कि मैंने CPA सिर्फ इसीलिए कर लिया क्योंकि पापा ने कहा था, ऐसा नहीं है. एंड नीदर पापा इज सेइंग दैट, बट आई डिड कम टू यू फॉर एडवाइस. यू टोल्ड मी व्हाट इट वाज एंड आई टुक इट फर्दर. Assuming the same sort of situation happens across other Indian households as well, if parents are watching and if their kids come to them and they ask कि यार हम CA कर रहे हैं या ACCA या CPA, इन तीन में से कोई एक फाइनेंस एंड अकाउंटिंग की हमें जॉब या डेजिग्नेशन, रादर जॉब तो बाद में आएगी, ये डेजिग्नेशन अटेन करनी है, डिग्री लेनी है, तो आपकी क्या रिकमेंडेशन है?
That's not a need. I mean, I really, it's kind of difficult to answer, but still, I would look at it this way. See, this decision ultimately the student has to take, and he has to take into consideration some other factors except that he's a good student. Your personality is important. Your English speaking skills are important.
Communication is
Your
important.
communication skills are very important. Now, if you have that in you and you dream of not going to USA or Canada, that's not something that I am very gung-ho about. But if you dream of being something in the corporate ladder in accounting line, which is, your manager, senior manager, director, CFO kind of thing, you actually, if your target is a major organization, a multinational, CPA would score any day over chartered accountancy. But if your interest is to practice, build your own accounting and audit practice in India, then chartered accountancy is the better option.
Is the natural choice.
Is the natural choice. But
Although,
huh,
can I tell you that recently we had one of our students come through, became a CPA a while ago, and then they were already practicing CA, so they also got clients from the US.
see, that's where I was coming to. Again, situation is what I was telling you earlier. It's a global economy now. Chartered accountancy firms are also auditing multinationals based in Germany, France, Austria, US, Canada, wherever. So you need to report on their legal requirements, on their accounting standards, and which degree would prepare you for that? I mean, there's no question about it. CPA is the answer for that.
I mean,
So
ACC
even
is
at the-
not any less prestigious.
No, it is not.
अच्छी डिग्री है, but it just, if you think about the amount of time it will take, पहले तो
That's one aspect. I think ACCA has many more papers to be
हाँ हाँ
cleared.
16 एग्जाम है उसमें भी.
And then again, like I said, it's the reach of the degree, your qualification. CPA outruns everybody else.
It's just acceptable in more places, in more positions, in more situations. वो वाली बात है.
Whether you're working in Dubai or whether you are in Ethiopia or you are in Singapore or Hong Kong or wherever, I mean, CPA does not need an introduction.
Correct. It's becoming that way.
It's that way.
Yeah. चलो अब एक सवाल आखिरी मेरा, just because I should, and this might hit you a bit hard. The last question I want to ask you is: you are an SAP consultant yourself.
Yes.
You built a life around it.
Yes.
Would you recommend CPA or SAP?
That's a wrong question altogether.
Okay.
That's a wrong question. SAP and CPA are not complementary. You can be a CPA without being an SAP consultant, but you cannot be an SAP consultant of value or recognition without a core competency in education, which could come from CPA, ACCA, CMA, Chartered Accountancy. But to say whether I should study ACCA versus SAP is not an educational qualification. SAP is a software. It's the leading software. The world runs on SAP now. I dare say that the world runs on SAP now. But
all of the biggest Fortune
SAP
500
is not an educational qualification. That's a very wrong. It's a wrong question to ask.
See, I know it's a wrong question to ask technically, but I had to ask.
You are entitled to some leverage with me, but leeway, not leverage, leeway with me. But that's a wrong question altogether. I mean, I could not have become an SAP consultant if I had not done my chartered accountancy.
Right. So I'll tell you why I'm asking. Thing is, a lot of people look at, depending on circumstance, ना some people think कि मैं ये सारी डिग्री कर लूँ. ऐसे भी लोग होते हैं. इनको दिखता है कि यार मेरे पास ज़्यादा टाइम नहीं है, मेरे पास अब एक छोटा सा स्लॉट है, इसमें पढ़ना है और एक लिमिटेड अमाउंट ऑफ मनी उसको इन्वेस्ट करना है. तो दे कुड बी पीपल हु वुड बी थिंकिंग एक्सक्लूसिवली कि यार या तो सिर्फ सीपीए कर लूँ या सिर्फ ऐसे भी कर लूँ.
नहीं, like I answered to you, that is the wrong thing. That's the wrong
करनी है तो वैसे भी और चीजें चाहिए होती हैं.
देखो, SAP की ट्रेनिंग आपको कोई इंस्टीट्यूट भी दे देगी. There are plenty of sham institutes around, but that's not the you throw your money. I wouldn't recommend that. More important is, if you've done your SAP from some such institute, is the customer going to accept you? Will you have the confidence talking to the customer on accounting requirements, business standard, business ethics, things like that? You will not. Internal controls, no.
पता ही नहीं होगा.
No, you have no clue what you're talking about. So knowing a software is not the answer. That's not an education qualification. I am a firm believer in education, and parents in India, they will, they'll go to any extreme to invest in their education of the children. If a child comes to you with this question, here's a degree that I can do by doing CPA and it costs me, let's say, 5 lakhs, and here's an SAP course which I can do for similar 5 lakhs, what should I do? My advice to the parents is invest in education, not in training in a software. That should come later, not now.
Correct. पहले बिल्डिंग बनाने के लिए बेस तो बनाओ.
हाँ, you have to be an engineer or an MBA or a chartered accountant to be an SAP consultant.
Correct. पहले ये चीजें तो करो.
हाँ.
Right, makes sense. And then if
to be a good SAP consultant.
To be a good SAP consultant. And then if somebody is already somebody who's done a post grad, then they're choosing CPA versus SAP. तो फिर
see, it's like, give an example. If you've not studied engineering, you will not be able to relate to production. If you've not worked in in a factory, you will not be able to relate to how manufacturing is done. So you may have learned SAP software, but you will not be able to relate to the real
The actual
business
why the modules work the way
business
they do.
model.
Yeah.
And what is SAP? SAP is a solution around your business processes.
Yeah. प्रोसेस ही नहीं समझ आने
तो
तो
अगर
फिर
प्रोसेस की आपको समझ नहीं है, आपने काम ही नहीं किया, आपकी एजुकेशन ही नहीं है उस लाइन की, तो आपने सिर्फ सॉफ्टवेयर
सीख भी लो तो क्या
सीख
करोगे?
लिया तो कस्टमर के आगे तो आप टिक ही नहीं पाओगे.
हाँ, ये वाली बात है.
You will not be able to hold conversation, forget lead the conversation. And in SAP as a consultant, your first requirement is to lead the discussions. You need to understand what their business needs are and relate them to what the SAP software provides. You have to marry the two
You have to do that as a
and
consultant.
come out with the best solution for the customer. So merely having a training on SAP is waste of money.
Okay, that is actually very interesting. I thought you would pick SAP over CPA any day, but
No.
you answered the question in such a way that it makes sense to me.
No.
And I hope to everybody else as well who's watching. With that being said, thank you so much, Dad, for being here, for taking out time from your busy retired schedule. And thank you so much for making a trip to the office on this Father's Day.
It's very
And I
nice.
love you. Thank you so much for
Very
being
nice
here, Papa.
stage in my life.
And I love you, Dad.
Thank
So
you.
thank you so much for
Love
being
you
here.
too. Love you too.
And thank you for sharing your knowledge. मुझे लगा यार कि मेरे पास खजाना है. मुझे सबको दिखाना चाहिए.
You are being too kind to me.
नहीं,
but
genuinely, Dad.
all
Very few people will
children
have
are to
careers
their
like you do.
parents. All children are to their parents.
I don't know. Maybe that's what it is.
Father
But
is the
genuinely,
hero.
few people would have the career you've had. So if you could actually come and share your thought process, it would add value. मैंने यही सोचा.
God has been great to me. Very kind
Okay.
to me.
Okay, awesome.
And proud to have a son like you. So,
चलो यार ऐसे
All
ये सब
well.
मत बोलो. आप मेरे को डांटते ही अच्छे लगते हो. ठीक है.
चलो,
चलो.
done.
Bye everybody.
Thanks.
Thank you so
Thank
much,
you.
guys,
Thank you.
for
Bye.
watching. And please do like, share, comment. We always read our comments. We respond to all of our comments as much as we can. And if you have a topic in mind that you think we should do a podcast on, me, Mohit, or one of the other guests, please leave it in the comments. We're going to read your comment and we're going to try and do a podcast on it. That's the idea. Okay. Thank you so much for watching. Subscribe. Bye.